Welcome back, warrior. We are reading Exodus chapter 1 today. It's kind of exciting, right? Okay, the children of Israel multiply. They are placed in bondage by Egyptians. Pharaoh seeks to destroy the sons born to Hebrew women. Okay, so we are past all of our stuff, so let's see where we're at now. God hears this cry of the captive, okay? So that's kind of the theme. Some historical background says many historians suggest that Egypt was ruled by a foreign group called the Hyksos during Joseph's time. When a new Egyptian dynasty later took control, it may be why Scripture notes that there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. So people to know, before Moses ever led Israel, his life was shaped and saved by courageous women, midwives, a mother, a sister, and even the daughter of Pharaoh, whose faith and bravery set the stage for the life of the deliverer of Israel. Isn't that so cool? Okay, also good to know the book of Exodus tells the story of Israel's deliverance from slavery in Egypt and their preparation to become the Lord's covenant people. The word Exodus means exit or departure. Oh, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so after so many years had passed by, it seems that the Hebrews or the Israelites were no longer just like, happy-go-lucky people with the Egyptians, but now they were being treated as slaves. So, okay. So, here we go. Now these are the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt. Every man and his household came with Jacob. Okay, so remember, those were the ones that came, right? This is the families of Israel in Egypt, okay? It says, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, and all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. So it makes sense. There was lots of people now, because Israel had so many kids, like all his posterity is just growing, right? Like you're just multiplying. When people have like 12 kids, it's easy for their family to get real crazy, right? Crazy big, and really fast. So, and he said, now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. So he's getting scared. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. I mean, that's crazy, right? But usually when we all have like a common enemy, it's like you get closer together, right? And the Egyptians, because you're going through a hard time, you're binding with those people who are going through that hard time with you, right? But the more and verse 13, and the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. That means like really hard, And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. Okay. So really quick, we're on verse 15 now. Just going to read this. These verses cover about 400 years. It's got this gamer over here. These verses cover about 400 years of time. 400 years. So that's like so much. So many people can be born in that amount of time. Jacob's family did not leave Egypt after the famine, but they had stayed and increased abundantly. Abraham's promise that his posterity would be great was beginning to be fulfilled. The 12 sons of Israel became the 12 tribes, and their descendants were aware which son they descended from and would identify by their tribe. As a whole, Jacob's descendants are now known as the children of Israel and the Hebrews, okay? All right, so Egypt was a world power now because of all the great wealth that they had accumulated from getting paid to get grain from them because they had been so smart and wise, because Joseph had been wise and stored it for them. And so everybody was broke, but Egypt had tons of money, right? And Egypt owned all their own land also. And the people were basically just renting it out. And Egypt would continue to get things because now there was a fifth part of everything that people grew or people had of abundance or whatever of where they're living, they had to give to the Egyptian government, okay? So Egypt was world power, had great wealth and military strength. And then a new king over Egypt came into power. So over 400 years, there would have been multiple pharaohs since Joseph's days, but many scholars suggest this phrasing means that it was a pharaoh of a new dynasty or family. This new pharaoh did not hold in remembrance the wonderful things that Joseph had done for Egypt, and now saw the Hebrews as a threat in Egypt's future. I would add that this new pharaoh, even if he did not hold in remembrance, he purposely forgot, right? It's convenient for some people to forget things or to be racist or whatever against the Hebrews, right? Or Israelites, because he probably was, just one of those peeps who just doesn't like to remember where they came from and give credit to where credit is due, but it's more of like the prideful kind, and wants to give credit all to himself. And so he sees, Egypt as having all this power, but not necessarily knowing that it came from Joseph and Joseph's hard work, right? So anyway, I think he purposely chose to ignore that fact so that he could do what he was doing, right? And so he was seeing the Israelites flourish and wondered what would happen if a foreign power came in and tried to seize control of Egypt, with the Hebrews uniting with the enemy and turning on Egypt. This new pharaoh felt vulnerable with a strong population who spoke a different tongue and worshiped their own God. What was the solution, right? So to enslave and weaken them, use their strength to build up Egypt. So the ancient Jewish scholar Josephus wrote the following. Now it happened that the Egyptians grew delicate and lazy as to painstaking and gave themselves up to their pleasures, in particular to the love of gain. Because now they're, right, that's how it is, this cycle. When you suffer, you turn to God. When you don't suffer and you're doing great, it's a pride cycle. You're like, oh, you get prideful, more prideful. And anyway, so then gave themselves up to other pleasures, and in particular to the love of gain. They also became very ill affected toward the Hebrews, as touched with envy at their posterity. For when they saw how the nation of the Israelites flourished and were become eminent already in plenty of wealth, because they're doers, okay? People of God are doers. Anyway, wealth which they had acquired by their virtue and natural love of labor, they thought their increase was in their own detriment. And having in length of time forgotten the benefits they had received from Joseph, particularly the crown being now come into another family, they became very abusive to the Israelites and contrived many ways of afflicting them, for they enjoined them to cut a great number of channels for the river and to build walls for their cities and ramparts, that they might restrain the river and hinder its waters from stagnation upon its running over into over its own banks. They set them also to build pyramids, and by all this wore them out and forced them to learn all sorts of mechanical arts and to accustom themselves to hard labor. Okay, so Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews. Okay, taskmasters were those set over the Hebrews to force them to perform labor. Their goal was to afflict them with their burdens. Some scholars suggest that the hope was to have such severe afflictions that it naturally would decrease the population of the Hebrews. But to their dismay, the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. So there are a lot of words and phrases in these few verses that help us understand how cruel the labor was upon the Israelites. And taskmasters were free to use their rod or lash, and the Egyptian sun was another unrelenting factor. The hours of work forced upon them were merciless, and as verse 14 shows, they would conspire ways to make their labor even more difficult upon them. There was no mercy for the Israelites, as the Egyptians forced them to build their treasured cities and monuments to protect their greatness. Now, verse 15. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, so we just go to verse 22, I believe. Let's make sure. Yeah. Verse 15. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. Good, because that's crazy that they would even do that, right? And that's what people do these days now, which is really sad, the whole abortion thing. Okay, and then says, and the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, why have ye done this thing, and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively and are delivered ere the midwives come in unto them. Therefore God dealt well with the midwives. And the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared God, that he made them houses. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared God, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. Okay, so Pharaoh is just like nervous about the guys growing up, right? So many scholars, because let's think, like if you have more army that are men, they're going to be strong, right? So many scholars have suggested that these women may have been Egyptian midwives set over Hebrew women. The text can be interpreted either way. It can mean Hebrew midwives or midwives to the Hebrews. Josephus also wrote that the king's cruel declaration to kill male babies was more than just for population control, but that he had heard a prophecy of a baby being born to the Israelites who would deliver them. Okay, see, this is what I was talking about to my family the other day, and they were like, you're crazy. And I was like, I feel like I read that somewhere. Anyway, here's a quote. About this time there would be a child born to the Israelites, who, if he were reared, would bring the Egyptian dominion low, and would raise the Israelites, that he would excel all men in virtue and obtain a glory that would be remembered through all ages, which thing was so feared by the king that, according to this man's opinion, he commanded that they should cast every male child which was born to the Israelites into the river and destroy it. Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews, chapter 9. Okay, and Elder David A. Bednar explained what it means to fear the Lord in these words. Different form, but related to the fears we often experience is what the scriptures describe as godly fear, or the fear of the Lord. Unlike worldly fear that creates alarm and anxiety, godly fear is a source of peace, assurance, and confidence. But how can anything associated with fear be edifying or spiritually helpful? The righteous fear I am attempting to describe encompasses a deep feeling of reverence, respect, and awe for the Lord Jesus Christ. Obedience to his commandments and anticipation of the final judgment and justice at his hand. End quote. Elder David A. Bednar. Therefore, they hushed their fears. April 2015 General Conference. President Nelson taught us that there will be times when we as disciples of Jesus Christ must stand up for what is right, just like the Hebrew midwives did. He says, quote, true disciples of Jesus Christ are willing to stand out, speak up, and be different from the people of the world. They are undaunted, devoted, and courageous. End quote. President Russell M. Nelson, drawing the power of Jesus Christ into our lives. April 2017 General Conference. Okay, so that is it for this chapter. And let me read the Read It, Live It, and we will be done. Okay, it's coming from this verse. It says, but the midwives feared God and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them. So long before Moses faced Pharaoh, two midwives chose quiet courage. Real courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it quietly refuses to bow. I just love that. Choose quiet courage. And isn't that true? I feel like sometimes we have to choose quiet courage to refuse to rebuttal when people say that we are not Christian on Instagram or on social media. And it's like, or on TikTok, because I got so many bad comments of people and I'm just like, what are they doing? Like, how do you, anyway, it's like the quiet courage. It's like, I'm not even gonna reply back. Also, do your teenage boys do this with the like super loud? It's crazy. Anyway, it's super annoying and I hate it. But okay, that is it for that, for Exodus chapter 1. And until Exodus chapter 2, stay strong, warrior.